everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. We're so glad you're here today.
We are talking about, well, we just had a little bit of fun.
Don't say the title we gave it. Okay, say the title.
Hey, it's pretty catchy. It's having fun by yourself.
Okay, that's a little better than the first way we worded it. Yes, but why? Why are we talking about this? This is a good.
We had a great comment from a person on, I believe, on Facebook or Instagram, one of the social media platforms, and they were having a hard time. Their kids were with their in-laws.
Yeah.
And they wanted some ideas. They wanted a discussion around having fun by yourself.
Before we dive into this, I want to say, like, if there's something that you want to know about, like, or you're interested in a topic, definitely DM us, because this person is a member of our community. I think she DM'd us, right? And said that she was really struggling. You already mentioned this,
Yes.
but that's how we got onto this topic, because the holidays, the kids were with the in-laws and she was really struggling. So, what to do about that.
Yeah, I think it's for people that are surprised by this phase of life. I think an element of it is the void of space and time, right? We think our whole life we're raising the kids and it's so busy, and we kind of look ahead and we have that dream. It's like you're chasing that carrot of having all this time to yourself, right? To devote to yourself. And all of a sudden you get there and you're kind of like, well, what now? Like, what do I do now? And I think that was the essence of what she was feeling.
Sure.
And it's really worth, I think, a conversation, because there's a couple of things to unpack through that. There's a couple of causes for why you might be really feeling like, gosh, well, what do I do now? And that's what we're going to touch on today.
Yeah. But at the flip side of that, like, if you're like me and I'm not quite there yet, because I've got Anthony in college, Andrew going to college, then I have AJ home for a couple more years, but it snuck up on me. I didn't even give much thought to, like, oh, I'm going to have more time to myself. And it was just all of a sudden it hit, like, holy crap, they're leaving. And like, what, like, now what? So I think it's hitting everyone different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think it's like, it can go from all or nothing pretty quickly. And then it's the whole grass is greener. So again, I'm not there either, but I do notice, like, if I find myself on the weekend and my daughter's off with her friends, or she's got things going on and, I don't have a big work commitment or anything I'm really pouring my energies into, that it can be really easy to just waste time and come out on the end of that weekend feeling like you didn't sit down maybe and eat like junk food all weekend, but you consume TV and you kind of, like, if you don't have a plan for that time, for that free time, isn't it so funny how quickly you can just fill it up with meaningless things.
Yes. And that, for me, I don't know if everybody listening, maybe it's just the way you and I are wired. I don't know how. I would be interested to hear what other women have to say, but for me, there's nothing worse than that, because I get
so
to
bad.
the end of the day, I don't want to use the word depressed lightly, because some people deal with big things, but I just feel like, I did nothing with my day. Like, I had all this stuff I could have done. I didn't do anything. And you just feel miserable.
Yeah. That's why I use the junk food example.
Yeah.
It's almost
it is like you did. Yeah.
it feels good in the moment, but then after you consume it, you're kind of like,
yeah.
Ick.
And maybe not everyone's like that. Some people might really just enjoy having a day and really, like, thrive in those moments. So everybody's a little bit different.
Well, and there's something to be said for that. If you are having trouble just shifting down, if you go from all or nothing, are you really just sensing the breaks and you just need to downshift slowly? And so some of those activities, like watching a great show, or some of the other things we're going to talk about today, they can help get you down into that place where perhaps you're coming out of just this, warp speed.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like the brakes are on, right? Anybody would have difficulty adjusting.
Yes, because it's almost like an all or nothing. You've gone for years to running around with the kids and doing all these things with the kids and all your holidays in particular. I think that would be a big change for somebody who's in the phase of life where their kids are older and now they're married, or they're serious with someone else, or maybe they're not serious with someone else or married, but they're living their own life and they're going skiing with their friends instead of being home for the holiday. That, for sure, I don't think any of us can be prepared for, because we've always had the holidays, at least, have always been with the kids, even if they go out and do their things on the
Yep.
weekend. The holidays, you're as a family. And to your point, the segue here is just like you said, if your daughter right now is out doing things with her friend for the day, or she's whatever, and you get to be at home, it's a parallel there, right? You're used to having them around or with them in the holiday as well, and then all of a sudden they're not. And if you're not prepared for it, you can just waste the day away and be totally miserable.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
so
we,
this,
back to your holiday point, we heard from so many women just this, because we're coming out of Christmas,
right.
who were really struggling with that. And I think some of the same principles apply. The holidays are going to be a little different, and you probably need to
Sure.
make that extra effort
Sure.
because you have that expectation, right? So your brain has this built up, what the holidays should be, feel like, look like. And so you may have to go through that extra effort, but essentially the same
Same conversation.
concepts apply.
Yep.
Exactly. Which the first thing that I have around this, and this is, my space, really where I like to go, and I'm going to go straight to the core. Let's not hold back. But, if you're having trouble being by yourself, then maybe it's time to look at how much you are actually liking yourself. Like, how much do you know yourself? Are you uncomfortable because you are filling your time with people, your kids, your job, and this time of real reflection or quiet is actually a time when you are forced to, you can no longer avoid maybe looking inside. It's difficult to run away from yourself when it's just you, right?
Yeah.
So, and we all have some emotional messiness that we're cleaning up through the years. I mean,
Yep.
some of that is normal. But if it's really difficult, maybe it's time to ask, how am I feeling about myself? And are there ways that I can work on feeling better about being alone?
Yeah, and I think that is a perfect place to start, and it's a very good point. And to that point, I just wrapped up a book by Greg Harden. I not just wrapped up, I wrapped it up maybe in November. But anyway, it was a fabulous book, by the way. I'll link it in our show notes. I don't think you've read it. It's amazing.
What's it called?
But in that, it's called How to Stay Sane in an Insane World.
Mm.
And it's very, very good. But he talks about that your best friend in the world should be yourself.
Mm.
And if you're not best friends with yourself, there's a problem. And he has this exercise in it. I'm getting a little bit off, but I think this still applies, where when you set goals for yourself, instead of setting all the things that you want, and I've talked about this in social media posts, talk about who you want to become. Instead of what do you want, what do you want to do, who do you want to become?
Who you become.
And if you're having trouble conceptualizing that and thinking about the type of person that you want to become, then take a step back and think about who you would want for a best friend, what that person looks like, what qualities you would want your best friend to have. And that's what you
And
should
be
want
that
for yourself.
yourself.
So that's a powerful thing,
So good.
because to your point, we've had so much space raising kids and running around to their activities that we probably have lost track maybe of ourselves a bit anyway. We certainly don't spend a lot of time alone. And we haven't even had time to think about, like, who are we? Do I like who I am? Do I like
Yeah.
who I've become? Who do I want to be? And then all of a sudden things quiet down.
And then hello.
It's a big,
Yep.
yeah, it's a big transition. And you actually did a post, which I loved. It was a reel just a while back. I think it was that one. Was it the one in the rain where you were like, the hardest question a mom can ask herself is like, who am I now? That the kids, with something to that effect.
Yeah.
But in the writing, I was just reading it the other day. You said, like, this can be your greatest time of self-discovery if you ask the right
If you
questions
allow
and
it.
you allow it.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind
Totally.
of where we're going here.
Yeah. And, we have a choice. So when you're in that moment, you can choose to just fill it with the busyness. You can fill it with getting in the pickleball leagues. You can fill it.
Yeah.
Hey, there's lots of
But
things
that's
you
not a
can
bad
do.
thing.
There's so much social. And by the way, there should be a balance of all of this.
Agreed.
But the point is if you are really struggling with having fun by yourself, meaning you have to find other activities because it's uncomfortable. If you're leaning into time alone, it becomes uncomfortable. Then there's something there that you should probably scratch the surface on. That's what we're getting at. And I love your exercise in that book, because what you said is, like, you have to be your own best friend. We can only love another person. We can only be a friend to somebody to the extent that we love ourselves or are a friend to ourselves, right? So that when I first heard that years ago, that was just huge. I mean, because we love our kids so much, we love our spouse so much, but we don't really stop to think like the extent we're only capable of giving love to the extent that we give love to
Mhm.
ourselves.
It's in the Bible. We've talked
Yeah.
about this in previous posts. It's
Yes.
in the Bible too. And when a friend mentioned that to me, one time, who I was in a life group with, I was blown away because I never thought of that verse, like love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you know how to love your neighbor well? Because you love them in the way in which you would
You
want
love
somebody to
yourself.
love you or the
Yeah.
way that you love yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it
It's
is
great.
such an important point. And I would add to that, Lynn, before you move on with the conversation, if you're having trouble being alone, it could also be not just that you're uncomfortable with yourself or don't know yourself well enough or maybe like yourself. It could also be that you have maybe some baggage that you need to deal with. And when left alone, those things come
Yeah.
up because
Yeah.
now you can't silence whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's past hurts or
Yeah.
regrets or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, that when things get real quiet and you've got to have some time by yourself, that starts to rear its head.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, each of those things would be solutions would be on an individual basis. And those are sometimes things to talk through with
Mhm.
either the professional or with like a really good trusted confidant. But, the one thing I would say that's always helped me and helped clients and women that we've worked with self-worth, if it's truly just a self-worth, like, and most people with self-worth issues don't even know it, right? And I think all of us have a little bit of that where we have doubts or we
Yep.
have, right? We could
I
all
agree.
just love ourselves a little bit better without being egotistical, without
Yep.
being, because that's very different than what we're talking about. It's not the outward expression of love. It's just really being content, right, with the person that you
Yep.
are to the extent. And we're going to talk about this later in another podcast when we talk about pride and coveting and like comparing yourself to
Oh, that's gonna be a
others,
good
right?
conversation.
Yeah, because it's the same root. Um, but yeah, I think just, hey, I love that friend example because it's like, how could you show up a little bit better for yourself?
Mhm.
And outside of the self-care, because everybody, we kind of know that you got to take time for yourself. You got to exercise. All that stuff's great. But also things like keeping your word, like what, what would you want out of a friend, like outside of just that they care and they want to spend time with you? You want somebody who's committed and because you like and trust people who keep their word. And I think one of the very best things we can do for ourselves is to do that when we make a commitment. Keep because you like people again who do what they say,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, sometimes we kind of have regrets or baggage or things we fail to do and we beat ourselves up
Yeah.
for it. So you can't change the past, but you can, make a decision and go forward and in keeping your word to yourself.
Absolutely.
And then just and two of these came from a book too, the Four Agreements. It's a very small book and you could read it in like an afternoon, but it's keep your word and always do your best. And just if you're doing your best, you're doing the best you can. And
Yeah.
you just you know you gotta let love and let go and
Yep.
let God.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay.
Next.
Next. So another piece of this is you could be trying to spend time alone and you're
Sure,
actually wired as an extroverted person and you're just going against your grain. So here's the time for that introverted extroverted conversation again.
Mm,
When you're introverted, you're going to get refueled by being by yourself. So you're probably not the people who are typing in saying, I have trouble being by myself. You're probably
yeah.
looking for more of that or craving
Sure.
more of it, right? So you could be an extroverted person who just maybe doesn't have enough now with all of the fun of the kids and the people aspect of the kids being
Yes.
in the
Things got,
house, just
yes.
having that taken away. And what do you need to do? For that. And you're more extroverted than I am. So how do you
I,
speak to that?
yeah, I mean, I wonder though if our extroverts who are listening are already, because they're extroverted, have such a social network that they don't struggle as much with this.
I would
I
I
don't
would
know.
tend to agree with some self-awareness, which we can't get to this age with lacking
Right. If
all
you're an
all
extrovert, you
self-awareness.
probably are somebody who's surrounded by people and
Yep.
have people to your house or
Yep.
have, a social network that's probably there for you. I would venture to guess that perhaps it's somebody that leans on the introvert side that's used to having their core people around in their family
Ah,
and maybe close knit or quieter holidays or get
yeah,
whatever that now the kids are gone and it's like
yeah.
that was
It's
everything
feeling
for me.
empty.
I would also say our number twos on the Enneagram, our
Yeah.
helpers probably are struggling with this type of thing of far more. So I think it depends on how you're wired.
Yes, which goes back to knowing yourself and
And
loving
knowing
yourself.
yourself and
If
loving
you know
yourself,
yourself more,
exactly.
you
But,
love yourself more.
yeah, exactly. So what you're asking me, what would you do to fill that gap if you're an extroverted person and
Yeah,
you need to have the people around?
yeah. I mean, just knowing that about yourself is step one, right? Because you kind of give yourself a little bit of some leeway and just knowing, hey, I can be by myself and have a good time, but I
Yeah.
probably should be actively seeking out these connections with
Absolutely.
people.
And here's the thing that I would say here, and this I'm gonna blanket this over whether it's a holiday, even though we're past the holidays. This would have been a timely conversation in December, but we're a little past it. Whether it's a holiday and you're feeling lonely because your kids aren't with you, or it's a weekend or whatever it is, and you're reflecting that the kids are gone and it's quiet and I'm lonely, whatever that is. And we've talked about this before, but it's worth saying again. You always have a choice in that situation. So let's say that it's a hypothetical, like Christmas is coming, and just odd because Christmas is just over, but Christmas is coming
Valentine's is coming.
and whatever it is. And you're usually like, you have the kids at home, you have your thing, and this year nobody's going to be here. You get to have the choice. You get to decide whether you're going to be at home and be miserable and wallow in self pity and perhaps take it an even another worse step forward in making your kids feel guilty about it. Because I've walked in those shoes and that's not okay to do that to your kids. But you could also choose to put on your big girl pants and decide to do something with the time that you have.
I love
Right.
that.
So it's everything is always about perspective in your mindset. So we can look at this instead of, oh, the kids are gone and I have nothing to do and I'm lonely and it doesn't look the same. We can look at it instead like, okay, I've got a new opportunity to do something new, to do a little bit of reinvention. Maybe if it's a holiday, that looks like you're going to plan a trip.
Yep.
Maybe you and your husband are gonna do, if you have a husband, something different and go out for a nice dinner and see a
Yeah.
movie instead, like a holiday movie. If it's on the weekend, maybe I don't know, you have some girlfriends over and have a movie night, or you
Yeah.
go out for, whatever it is, but we can fill these spaces. Um, if you're extroverted and you need that in doing things, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, once again, we're on the same wavelength because
That where you were headed.
well, yeah, just we don't have control over our circumstances, right? Sometimes it is crappy. Sometimes, our kids, they should feel guilty because they're right, they're being little jerks, and maybe they should be devoting more equal time to.
That's true. Actually,
I'm
thank you for saying that. Because there could be somebody listening whose feelings I just really hurt because their child
well, there's so
doesn't
many
see them. There are
scenarios. There's
and you
that,
can't
and
cover
there's
them
the
all.
other. Yeah.
But you're right. It could go both ways because maybe you need to have a conversation with like, I miss you and we need to see you.
End of the day, it is what it is, right? Sometimes you just have to accept it and then examine how you got to that place with your kids and then
Yes,
try to make it better from there.
that's
But
right.
we don't, I have the same thing, the same thought. We don't have control over those circumstances, but we do have control of how we react. And
Exactly.
when
That's
we
what I
are
was trying to
missing,
say.
and when we are missing the kids in those times, I think one of the best things, I love your suggestions to do is like, do something new because novelty sparks stimulation and growth and just gets you out of that place where you have all those memory engrams and patterns tied to all the things you do with your kids, right? So I
Right.
think like one of the worst things you can do is the same home pattern, like what
Oh,
you hit the nail on the head because okay, so the kids aren't there, but you're going to decorate the same tree and you're going to put up the same ornaments and you're going to make the same dinner
and it's just reminding you of the
Oh,
loss.
yes,
But
it's
they're
gonna
not a loss, but
or
it's
just
reminding you of what's
it's
not there.
exactly like the elephant in the room is you're doing it, but the kids aren't here and you're
Yes.
separated, right?
Yes.
So you can only it's hard to focus on the right thing. So put down the ornaments And like you said, go out and do something else. Maybe you don't have the means to do a trip, but and let's get off the holidays. Maybe it's just
Yeah,
a,
please.
a regular weekend in the spring. Like there's lots of activities that you can do by yourself. You could take a class like photography. You could take a yoga class. Gardening is a really great solitary activity. Cooking,
Yeah.
baking. This is just a chance to get,
Pottery.
like you said, it's an opportunity to get really creative
Mhm.
and try something. And guess what? If you don't like it, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can try
Well,
something
that's
new.
here's the other thing, because I think some of us are afraid to do it because we're afraid we won't like it or it's going to stink. And then you have to like feel bad because you tried something you didn't like it. I can't tell you how many things, even like jobs that I've tried. I mean, not a ton of them, but there's been multiple things that I've done, and I realized in a year or two that it wasn't for me. And
Yep.
guess what? I'm still here, and actually I'm doing something I really love
Yeah,
now. And sometimes you don't get to what you really love until you do a couple things that you don't like and figure you.
exactly.
It's sometimes trial and error,
The hardest step is just the first step.
right?
It's getting
I agree.
started. And so that's what we're here to do, is just to say, here's your little push, here's your little nudge. It's time to register for the class. It's
Yeah,
time to click accept the invite. It's time to, buy the yoga mat, whatever it might be.
right.
Get out there and try something new for yourself.
Yep.
Or and by the way, like, because one of the comments we get online all the time is volunteering and charity. It doesn't have to be about you. This can be such an opportunity to contribute back and really make a huge difference in another living
Absolutely.
beings, whether it's an animal or a child or a senior citizen.
Mhm.
There's
There are so many
Yep.
avenues to contribute and give back.
Yep.
And this is the thing too, that it also comes back to, I think, this conversation, and maybe you were heading here next, is just having purpose. You have to have some sense of purpose beyond just being a mother to your kids, and not to negate anybody who has been at home with their kids and
Yeah.
that was their primary focus. Like, God bless you.
Yes.
That is such an important job and such a gift. But there, if you only, if that's your entire identity and you've done that your whole life and you've had no preparation for what was going to come once those kids left, you could be setting yourself up for
Mhm.
some major heartache. So if you are that person who is now in an empty nest, it really is time to start to think about some of these things that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And if you are a mom that still have kids at home, and we have some listeners even that have younger kids that just like to listen for preparation, I beg of you, be proactive and at least just wet your whistle a little bit with
Yep.
something that you have for yourself. It doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you a bad mom, but you need to have some sense of meaning and contribution, something that you're giving back, that you feel like you're making a difference in. And it
So
doesn't
good.
have to be some big career. It could be anything,
Right.
anything that you enjoy that you feel like,
So it's funny that you say that, because I've been doing some more posts about purpose, right? Because that's my space, that's my wheelhouse.
yeah,
I love that. So I've been just leaning into that a little bit because of the need and the feedback. But I have been getting some pushback from time to time on people who will say things like, well, guess what? The meaning of life is just to have fun. Or they'll say things like, just forget all that. We've been pushing our whole lives. When is it time to just, sit back and kick up your feet? And, on social media, you don't get to get into the long
yeah,
form like we do here, which is why I love these conversations. But my point is that everybody's purpose is different,
yeah,
but you have to have a purpose. So that person who thinks like, just have fun, their purpose is in can maybe be an example to just be fun and joyful
sure,
for other people. But whatever it is, it's still a purpose.
yes,
Is it the right one for you though? And that's what we're examining,
yeah.
right? And because our purposes shift, our purpose shifts, and we can have multiple purposes throughout our life.
And I think that here again is where we're all wired a little bit differently. So for somebody, and like for me, I would say, I'm so jealous of you, to the person that says like it's
Yeah.
just time to have fun and relax, because I'm just not what, like, I don't mean to, I'm not hoping this doesn't sound belittling, but like for me, Like, I tend towards, like, emotional upheaval and distress and a little bit of sadness, like, I'm not the person,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that can just kick back and look at it like, "Hey, I'm having fun now, like, where's the next."
There's a different balance for you.
That for me, I know
Me
for
too.
myself that I am much more emotionally level, emotionally balanced, mentally healthier when I feel like doing something
Yes.
constructive, working to give something back. And I will, because of the way I'm wired, I will have to be doing something
Yes.
until like I am into my 90s or
And
however many
I
days God
honestly
graces me.
believe like majority of people are the same way. Like this, like purpose is it goes way back to when we were in tribes and communities and we each had like something that we contributed for survival. Like
Yeah,
you have to have it. That's what I was alluding to. It's like, but I think when those comments come in to me, I just want to gently like kind of point out that it comes from a place of lacking self-awareness, which is, what we strive to get more of here. Because if you think that your way is the way for everybody, then you're completely missing your own uniqueness,
yeah,
right? You can't, people who don't see their own
yeah,
uniqueness, or when you do see it, you'll be opened up to all the different colors
yeah,
of the world and different people, right? And how they are
yeah,
wired. And
yeah.
that's the most beautiful thing. So we can't project our what we would need. God bless my mother. I absolutely love her. But sometimes too, we come from a place of like working, working, working. And I think where a couple of those comments came from where people are kind of pushing aside their own needs and driving through into just work,
Yeah,
right? Using it as a cover.
yeah.
And so my mom, maybe one of those people, Betty, I hope you're not listening, or if you are, hint, hint.
Turn it
And,
off.
or listen, turn it
Yes.
off.
Oh,
But she'll often say to me, "Oh, you need to slow down. You're doing too much. It's this." And for like you said, I'm not making the same mistakes as you, and we're wired similarly, but I'm different.
right.
And
We're all different.
while I do appreciate your outside perspective, just make sure that, and I think that's a good lesson for all of us to not, dump our, project our wiring on our kids, going back to our kids.
Absolutely. And our friends and anybody else. Like
Yeah.
I think we have a tendency just in the world at large. And social media makes it so much easier to want
Yeah.
everybody to think and act the same way we do and be the same, have the same personality, same view of the world. And that's why we're all special because we all are different. But we all need to, in that, have some grace for each other to be different, right?
Yeah.
Because but here's the thing, circling back to that purpose conversation, I just want to say one more thing before we move on is that I'm guessing for a mom who is writing to us and saying like, I don't know what to do with myself now. Like the kids are grown
Yeah.
up, they're not coming home at the holiday, or I'm not like whatever. I just feel like I can't get myself together. I'm guessing that person needs a new sense of purpose.
Mhm.
Purpose. The answer for
100%.
that person, if you're listening, is probably not, you should just be enjoying yourself now. Like now is the time to have fun. The answer for you is probably like, you are an amazing person.
Mhm.
You're an amazing mom, and you will always be a mom, and you can always pour into your kids. But guess what? You're really amazing at
Yeah.
doing other things too. And the world needs your other
Love
gifts.
it.
And when you can
Beautiful.
tap into that, and here's the deal, I think if you tap into that as a daily sort of
Rule
whatever
to live by or
rule,
something to live
right,
by.
daily lifestyle,
Mindset.
mindset, whatever it is, then when you get to that weekend or to that holiday or whatever it is, if the kids aren't around, you're probably going to feel a lot less sad about it, even if you are just hanging at the house,
That's so
because
true.
you filled your whole week up or your whole month up with doing things that were really bringing you life
Yeah.
and joy.
Yeah. It's mic drop. Yes. It's so good
Yeah.
because yeah, it just goes back to that. It's purpose is not rational always. It's not logical always, but you have to have one. And I know that, if you are that mom in that place, just going back to the example of volunteering, and because we get asked that all the time. Well, I don't know what is my purpose. Guess what? Your
It's such a hard
purpose,
question.
it is. And we do cover this a lot in our course. Like if you are somebody who's really serious and wants to get intentional about it, that's probably where you need to go.
Yep.
Is to go to the masterclass where we take you through that to identify it.
I'll
But
link that in the show notes
yes,
too.
but I think a lot of people will just sit and spin on that
Yeah. Wondering
instead
what
of
their purpose
taking
is.
action. Because
Yep.
sometimes you need to take confident, bold action in an unknown direction.
Mhm.
And you'll eventually find your way there.
Yes.
But like standing still is not getting you there.
Yes.
So start with volunteering. That's our advice.
That's a great
right?
place to start. And do you have much more? Because we can start to wrap
No,
it up. But
I was just going to ask if we're having fun by ourselves yet.
I am. I'm always no. I'm actually that's a story for another day. I went through a bumpy road. But I think let's wrap up with this. This is something for me, and you just touch on this, that was so powerful about a month ago. Because I went through, like, in the fall, this weird, you
Yeah.
walked with me.
Mhm.
But I'm an Enneagram 6, and very often Enneagram 6, they spend time in their head but it's unproductive time, and we don't have a great connection to our gut, like an intuition. So I'm the person that spends so much time like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What if I'm doing something that's not what I'm supposed to be doing? Like that sort of thing. But I do think you said that, like, that's the big question, is how do I know what my purpose is? How do you find it? If you don't have a good sense of intuition, or you waver, or you're somebody like me that craves certainty, like you want to be
Mhm.
certain before you get started, because what if it's not the right thing? My pastor said the most beautiful thing about 2 months ago that just, like, unlocked, was such an aha moment for me, and it was this: you're not supposed to have certainty about everything in life. We are supposed to walk in uncertainty. As human beings, there is no certainty. You have to
Mhm.
take the next right step, being uncertain, and knowing that somebody else is certain for you.
Yeah.
And for me, like, it almost, it brought me to tears then, and it chokes me up a little bit now, because for me it's like, okay, I don't have to know the exact right answer. I don't have to be super certain of the path. I can be uncertain and still take that next step.
Yes.
If there's a door open for me, or something
Oh,
like that
that's
I
so
could
great.
try, I'm going to do it, even if I don't know for sure.
I know you just helped so many people by saying that.
I hope,
That what
because
you just
I think
said.
that's
Huge.
is very, very powerful.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that again in the 6 human needs in a few weeks, when we talk about that, when we have a whole episode directed towards that. And that's the first human need, is certainty.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a
It's a big one for me.
conversation. Whew,
Okay.
so good.
Anything else you want to add?
Gosh, there's so much that I think we got to leave that stand.
Yeah, I agree.
think.
Okay,
Yeah.
ladies, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Make sure you're following us on all of our channels. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. If you want to watch the full episode of this, you're going to go to YouTube. If you want to listen, we're on, oh, you can find us on all the platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google Music, I think it is. Anyway, and don't forget to check out our website, www.lifeafterkids.com. Are you not wrapping us up?
Every time we type a
Every
new-
single time.
What are we
I just
saying
need
this
to end
time?
it.
Yes.
Have
Please
an
do.
awesome, amazing
Happy,
week.
healthy, amazing day.
Yes. Take
Hugs
care.
to you, Mama.